Good afternoon. If I were to believe social networks, only one topic occupies the web right now, the world actually. You know, the French parliamentary explanation and the Republican arc. An element of answer comes in the informational bubble or the filtering bubble. It's a concept developed in 2011, which explains this. The bubble is the state in which a web user belongs when the information he gets on the internet results from a customization done against his own will. Is it the fault of the algorithm? To discuss this, to my right, Dearbhail MacDonald, journalist and author in Irish, and Cyril MALARGÉ, to my right actually, Director General of Soprasteria. Now, let's start with the first question to you, Cyril. Is there a sort of, do the internet get caught in a bubble or in a ghetto? Good morning. When we talk about the enclosing of the internet, we talk about informational bubble of disinformation. It's not a new topic. You know, it has always been there. Simply, it has always existed. What's new today is the echoing chamber provided by the networks, by algorithm, and for about a year and a half now, algorithm which are spiked with AI and especially generative AI. Such algorithm will use fake accounts to deploy, disseminate false information. So when we talk about social network, there are two phenomena. The first one is the algorithmic ghetto. That is basically, I'm an individual, I surf the web. All of a sudden, I will receive only almost systematically content which corresponds to my questionings, my preferences, my opinions, my mind frame. That's the ghettoing. The second phenomenon, which is disinformation or fake information, or the authors of disinformation use social networks to propagate in a viral way fake news, what we call deep fake videos, which have been manipulated by artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. A couple of figures to explain that it's not a myth, it's a reality, clearly. First figure, the number of deepfake, AI manipulated videos in France, it was multiplied by 10 between 2022 and 23, multiplied by 10. So Facebook in 21, just for 2021, removed 8 billion fake accounts, the equivalent of the world population just in fake accounts. Just to tell you, it's a very serious topic. The EOCD this year, in 2024, published and considers that the informational threat for the next 2 years is the second major threat at global level. Last point I want to insist on, because at Soprasteria, you know, we are a public service company. We are strongly committed there. We did a survey with the Ipsos survey, opinion survey company in February 24. Almost 3/4 of the French population considers that disinformation may generate violence, and almost 3/4 of the French citizens consider that this could damage the democracies. So myth or reality, it is a reality and totally not under control. Dearbhail, I have exactly the same question. As a journalist, author, is it a myth or a reality?
Premièrement, je suis très honorée d'être parmi vous cet après-midi.
Very happy to be with you this afternoon, but I'm a member of the board of directors of the Irish Cultural Centre, but for your comfort and for practical reasons, I will not speak English.
It is impossible to disagree with Cyril that we are living in an age of cynicism and one where we have a huge infodemic and where there is a mass crisis of trust. Just earlier this week, Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the United Nations, identified both the climate emergency and the threat posed by technological companies, by digital technologies in particular, including generative AI, as one of the existential threats that is aggravating division, that is enlarging power imbalances and undermining human rights all around the world. This is not a myth, this is a reality. In the battle between the algorithms and the citizens, we the citizens are losing. And in the battle, the ideological as well as the groundswell battle between the tech bro, turbocharged capitalism in Silicon Valley versus the future of humanity, that is very, very real, and we're at risk of losing that too. The internet gave us a great promise of a utopia, but the internet has become the splinternet. It's become a zombie land, a swamp where humans and bots, and sometimes a mix between the two, are running around. We were offered social connection, and now we're offering very little. You know, you might say, well, as Cyril acknowledged, you know, fake news, disinformation, misinformation, the radicalization of vulnerable groups, that is not you, that trying to sway public opinion and behaviours, it is true, it's as old as time. But what is new and what has changed is both the speed and the scale with which this is happening. And what we're going to see with generative AI, amongst all of the promises that it holds out, is an information arms race that we as citizens and as societies and economies need to win. And these things have realised consequences, as well as land, sea, air, and cyber and space. This invisible war, the battle for I suppose, information and for perception, is very, very real. This is 5GW, the fifth generation warfare, and that is something that has real-life consequences for us all. I think it's important to say what we're not talking about. You know, the hallmark of civilization, of civilized societies and democracies, is the right to freedom of association, to form communities, to form subcultures, to have diversity. That is not what we are talking about. We are talking about the targeted radicalization of very, very vulnerable groups. We saw it during COVID. We've seen it through so many other spheres, and particularly in this consequential year of elections, including your own. We had mine most recently yesterday in Northern Ireland. So it really, really matters. And to say that it is a myth, I think, is an insult to all of us.
Alors, on a entendu à quel point c'est une réalité.
We heard it's a reality. We heard that utopia internet is turning into a zombie land. This raises issues for democracy. Now, the bubbles, as Julian Dampoli said, are they the fact of chaos engineers, or maybe algorithms are idiots?
The algorithms aren't idiots. It's how we program, it's the data we put in them, and to what use we put them, what is dangerous. I think it is worth reflecting on what is at stake, because we know that the social media landscape that has emerged is a threat to democracies. It's a threat to the rule of law. If we do not have a shared reality, we heard this, if anyone attended the earlier debate just before Cyril and Fabien and I came on stage, we heard about that if we do not have a shared reality, if we do not have a certain level of trust. It doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but we have to have a certain shared reality. Otherwise, if we don't have that knowledge and we don't have that trust, we do not have peace, we do not have democracy, we do not have the rule of law. And I think the real question, again, it's easy to state that this is not a myth. It's also easy to state what the risks are. And for me, it is a question of trust. You know, I am not anti-competition. I am a journalist. I believe fully in freedom of expression. But I think the question is, do we trust social media companies? And unfortunately, in the past, what their behaviour has told us is that despite retiring the phrase, move fast and break things, they are indeed moving faster and breaking things. And the things that they're breaking are us. And the thing that they're breaking is that sense of public consensus. And I think that in the past, where we have asked them, when we've placed our trust in them, we have been failed in areas from child protection to privacy to, you know, to whether it's our health information or financial information. And that poses a real question. And the reason why it matters, you know, there's always been a concentration of power and wealth when it comes to my world, the world of media. But what's also one of the distinguishing factors, Fabien, is that the concentration and wealth of power in a group of men, we know them simply by their surnames, Zuckerberg, Thiel, Musk and others. It is that concentration of power and wealth in these technologies which I think actually poses one of the greatest risks, and that is one of, I suppose, the ideological battles between a turbocharged capitalism and another form which says, we're not asking you not to develop the technologies, we are asking you to develop it with us and not against us.
Cyril, on a bien entendu la question de la...
We heard this notion of trust, security, freedom, but eventually what should be done? Is it an issue of education? Can you tell us what are the stakes in your opinion? Well, first you have to be aware that it is a real issue. So Dearbhail said it. What is at stake is democracy, the ability to be sovereign when there is a foreign country entering, manipulating, toying with the election, like in Slovakia in the last European election, where a progressist candidate was victim of a deep fake, which was in favor of a pro-Putin candidate. So if we cannot make a difference between truth and false, even if scientific truth doesn't convince anybody, we got a danger. So first, we have to be aware of this, and we should not ignore it. 60% of the French are informed only through social networks, and 80% of young people. So we're talking about the future. You know, 80% of young people only get information from social network. Second, what is fundamental is education, awareness raising. If you do in school, if at school we do not fabricate a true, general, solid culture, if we don't develop critical sense to to be able to discriminate, you can put everything you want. Regulation, technology won't suffice. So priority is to raise the awareness, but beyond the awareness raising session, which already exists in secondary school, in high school, you need something more solid. You know, we need a spine, and we have to make sure that the young population should have a critical sense and real culture, and don't stop there, because later on in these companies, within companies, we have trainings on cybersecurity, which are mandatory, but I don't see why we would not raise the sensitivity of our employees on such a topic. Then, second topic, regulation. I suppose that Dearbhail will talk about that, but it's brand new. The Digital Service Act, the AI Act just came out. We have no, distance, but like any regulation, it won't be sufficient. It will have to be associated with means coming from the private sector, and it's very technological means. If the AI attacks us through deepfake, we can use AI to defend ourselves. And when I see Axel Doche developing the democratic shield for European elections, it is the backbone, as a great initiative. When I see what we do at Sopra Steria with the Pegasus Circle, well, if we are able to have a public power which says, I will define the defense strategy of the nation, because that's where we are, vis-à-vis such attacks, and I equip myself with means provided by technological industrialists, well, AI can help observatory of disinformation, detection and processing of fake news, fact-checking, labeling, certification of content. So somehow, well, this is something that could be very useful, facilitated by public authority, but I come back to the point really essential to me. It is education and sensitive awareness raising. So first leads mentioned, regulation of the means, awareness raising, education. So, Dearbhail, what would you propose on your side?
Yes, I think that what we have to agree is that our rights in the physical sphere have to be protected as much in the digital sphere. I think that's the baseline that we have to work from. And I think one of the big expressions of this ideological battle between a sort of turbocharged capitalism, maybe represented by the US and Silicon Valley, and a more sort of citizen-led approach, which we have seen in the EU. That we've seen that with, you've already mentioned some of the regulation, whether it's the GDPR regime, whether it's the Digital Services Act, and more recently the EU AI Act. But regulation can't do all of the work that is required on its own. And regulation, as we know, also carries its own risks. So, for example, if we have poorly designed regulation, it can lead to censorship. It can lead to, to excessive censorship or take down policies that actually maybe don't work to do it. I think that what is lacking as well, and I suppose this is expressed with companies saying that there's a fear of missing out. Once there are different regulatory regimes and different regulatory landscapes, that can add to the pressure. So I think it really is incumbent on governments all over the world to try and meet those standards. It's really interesting being in Ireland, where many of the European headquarters of many of the tech companies are based. So a lot of the litigation that has led to landmark legislation being struck down, and a lot of the innovation has actually come as a result of cases taken in this tiny country with less than 6 million people on the island. So we're very, very keen to both the advantages and disadvantages of regulation. And I think that, regulation can be a double-edged sword, but a lot of it is about having agreed standards. So I think really, Fabien, it's going to involve a huge collaboration at national and EU and international level to develop standards. That's going to involve governments, academia, it's going to involve citizens, it's going to need to be very, very grassroots. And what I think we need to do is to empower citizens, to decant the power back to citizens. In the future, I imagine, if they're not already there, that we're all going to have data brokers, essentially people who are there to manage kind of the use of our information. As a journalist and as an author, I have my concerns about AI, chiefly about copyright and the use of my intellectual property. I recently went on to ChatGPT and asked them for a biography of Dearbhail MacDonald, and what came back was kind of quite scary in terms of the inaccuracies. But it did a brilliant. I asked it to write a novel based on a very, very bad accountants conference, and it was absolutely superb how they described accountants meeting together. So there are risks and rewards in there, but I guess like everything, it comes back to who guards the guards. And the best antidote for the social media companies is to raise their game, to raise their standards.
Peut-être une toute petite dernière question avant de passer.
Maybe one last question before moving to the audience. We just heard that citizens should play a key role. We see citizens on the, can we talk about the abstention of the election? Is there, could we resolve the contradiction? Do you have proposal? Could you move? Yeah, thank you. So to understand the social network, citizens is not interested. It depends. I mean, when there is a fire, they pay attention. Again, when we look at what goes on now right now for the elections in France, after 20 years of drop of participation, it's rising again. We know why, which proves that it's reassuring that at one stage, when we need to be mobilized because there is a form of danger for democracy, well, citizens will find their fundamentals and get mobilized. So I think it is a sign of hope. But after that, I think it's not enough. Let me come back to this notion of education, awareness raising. We have to structure things. We have to give spines. We have to build in time. We need to give basis to the citizens so that they can understand without being dogmatic, and we have to do it at each stage of life. So I think it is something which is fundamental, and this will come and support the reaction of the citizens. But I'm rather positive vis-à-vis what I see today in terms of reactions.
I agree with Cyril, but I think something we are overlooking is that we are assuming that all of the negativity around information bubbles is by bad actors or non-state actors. But a lot of the information bubbles and a lot of the misinformation and disinformation that has been propagated in recent times has been by politicians, has been by people probably who we should expect better to do it. And I think that is important, and it is important just to remember that it is just not all bad state actors, that it's a wide variety of people.
Alors il reste du temps pour les questions de la salle.
Oui, bonjour. Vous avez finalement...
So you didn't talk much about the informational bubble, that is enclosed bubbles like beyond fake news and deep fakes. we are each and everyone in our own bubble, and we end up dialoguing with people who are just in agreement with us in Paris, you know, they don't understand, and in you know, and people other places, people, I don't know anybody who vote Macron. So shouldn't we regulate, because it's difficult, you know, so that they would have access and we could be in contact with opinions which are not ours, but which could be which exist and which make us to think differently. Well, there are bubbles everywhere in politics, in the economy, even in sport, if I may say so. So basically today, when we look at the world, it's a mass of bubbles that do not dialogue much. And it's true, but I will remain very modest. I don't have the solution. That's why I think education could be something that would be essential. And then after that, I think that the transparency of information and vis-à-vis that the role of traditional conventional media, I'm sorry, but today we can really ask ourselves questions about their role, because if the role of media is purely to foster the economic model and to send to do news, at one stage and pure emotion. Well, you need an objective treatment of our news. You should be transparency in information, and somehow each at every level, being the companies, the family circle, and so on. You know, the people should contribute to provide the general culture. It is a highly complex topic, but algorithm, let's not dream, they don't function alone. They're being manipulated by people who have intentions, and these people, I mean, they have to be processed, because the algorithm, you know, it runs what it's been designed for, and often it does it better than humans.
Yes, thanks for your question. I think it goes back to what I said earlier. What we're not talking about is the very human act of forming communities, of being part of subcultures. Personalization has been a fact of human life, you know, since it began. But I think the difference is that very, very targeted, that algorithms that are, you know, if you, especially during elections, where you are being targeted with fake news, and that is where the danger lies. And you know, companies will tell you that they've got red teams, that they have safety teams to put in place, but the guardrails aren't sufficient for that, so that we're not getting that broader view. I'm sure anyone here who's on social media, whether it is Twitter or Instagram, you know, one of the biggest mistakes you can do is follow a word or a topic that you didn't intend on, and then you just get absolutely, you know, your feed is absolutely flooded with that and with the spam, and that is very, very targeted. And that's, you know, a lot of the complaints in the election is that people are getting fed stuff that is too conservative, you know, or too liberal. But when it is that lack of moderation, that goes to the bigger question: who gets to moderate?
J'aimerais ajouter quelque chose, si je peux me permettre.
I would like to add something, because this is a key point which has been mentioned. I'd like to come back to this concerning the regulation, the Digital Services Act. It concerns the major platforms, the very large online platforms with more than 45 million users. What we want to do with this regulation to say, well, I know that your business model does not accept this, but it is your job to fight against disinformation, to deal with the fake account, fake news, and so on and so forth. This regulation has capabilities and financial resources which up to the annual turnover. So what I expect, and it's a true leverage, is at one stage, you know, the hand should not hesitate when we have to apply sanctions to oblige platforms which are outside of any control, to oblige them to invest sufficiently to fight themselves against disinformation, because everything goes through the platforms. My hand trembles. We got time for a short question. One short question and a short answer. Qu'est-ce qu'elle fout? Thank you for these interesting talks. I liked it when you talked the fact that you closed in the informational bubbles. Mean we cannot see, we can't get a common reality as it is. Could we try to be inventive, to act on technology? Can't we give the regulators more means to act technically or to impose things on algorithm, for example. So kind of a mandatory randomization, and or is it under study? Short answer. This is a long topic, yes, and I want more public-private partnerships. We want regulators and the public authorities to define the strategy, give the legal means to treat and accept to work with the industrial of the IT world. If we work together, we can contain the threat. Dearbhail?
I think again, it sort of comes back to the regulation point and about transparency and also enabling both the companies, and also I think another big part that would help is a huge investment in academic research to do this. But I think transparency is the antidote to it. I'm not all that confident that fines or super fines are going to work, because the bigger companies can just absorb that risk and absorb that cost. But that is why, even as a journalist and a free speech advocate, I still offer caution.
Merci beaucoup à Dearbhail, McDonald.
Thank you, Dearbhail, McDonald, and Cyril MALARGÉ for their presentation.